We're about to do a live show. I'm eating candy. I'm sucking on this Tic Tac. Got these orange Tic Tacs. I'm sucking on them hard. We're doing a little, like a 10-minute little show real quick. We're doing a live show, so this is a little thing. This is gonna air whenever, February, I don't know. And I'll probably put it on the computer. But Harold Davis, you know, I seen you on TV. Harold Davis here. We're gonna chit chat. I seen Harold Davis for years on television. I said, as soon as I get him on the show, I get him on the show. Then the stars opened up, and here you are. But I know you from television, but I don't know you. So who the hell is Harold Davis?
Well, you know, I guess you would call it an activist, businessman, family man. You know, I've been out here, you know, dealing with issues since probably around 1988 when I got fired off the only job. 1990, I got fired off the only job I ever had at United Parcel Service. And so, you know, I saw a lot of injustice there while I was there. And, you know, one of the things that disappointed me was, you know, I thought if I went to school and got an education, you know, that, you know, I would be able to participate in this so-called American dream. But when I got there with 2 degrees, an accounting degree and a minor in industrial engineering, I found out that I didn't even fit in. I mean, I was training as an industrial engineer at UPS. I was training people out of Northwestern, out of Yale, out of Cornell, and Caucasian people who eventually walked right past me and didn't know half the stuff that I knew. And so, you know, and so you know, I got discouraged with that corporate America stuff, so I filed a lawsuit. And in filing a lawsuit, basically, it was a discrimination lawsuit, and it ended up being thrown out of court. But, you know, we have to try to at least fight. I used to see grown men at UPS that had been there 15, 20 years prior to I got there in rooms crying. I mean, black men. And I couldn't understand why they were crying. And I couldn't understand why black men in these positions of management, the thing with UPS was, as a management employee, you became part owner in the company before it went public back in, I think, 2003 or so. And so allowing you to own stock, which meant you would become part owner in the corporation. And if you were able to move from one supervisory level to a division manager level, in maybe 10 years, you can walk away with $5 or $6 million. So a lot of the Caucasian managers were doing that. And those guys were leaving that company at 35, 36 with high school degrees and walking out of there with millions of dollars. I mean, the guy who was in charge of the district, a guy named Len Hager, dropped out of school in 10th grade and ended up working for Greyhound as a baggage, end up becoming a district manager who walked away with about $30 million. And here's a guy that had inferior education. I mean, had no way of exercising any intelligence, but he was in charge. And the only way that we found out that these guys that were over us didn't have any education was when I filed the lawsuit, and we found out through discovery and depositions that these guys had no education, but they had millions of dollars. In the process of the depositions that we did, those guys, rather than continue to embarrass themselves, they just resigned. And so eventually they terminated me through Father George Clements, who was involved in my termination. LaRue Martin, who works there now as a intergovernmental public relations, whatever he calls himself doing. Yeah. They brought him to Chicago to try to, out of Portland, to try to calm me down and talk to me, you know, but the character that always, to me, in my mind, who UPS would give millions of dollars to, George Clements. Matter of fact, they built the new church when the old one burnt down. And he called me one day and said, if you just apologize, you can go back to work. And I said, apologize for what? I said, I didn't do nothing. And I said, well, why are you involved in this? He said, well, my nephew is Tim Hart, who was the personnel manager at the time, which I didn't know that was his nephew. But here's a priest that got involved in helping to validate a termination of somebody who was fighting injustice. And then he's heralded around the country as though somebody that we should respect.
On the live show, we're going to talk about divide and conquer and why the African American community is the African American community that we know, especially those of us live in cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, and whatnot. You went to Lindblom, you just told me.
Yes, sir.
What grammar school?
I went to Carver.
You went to what?
Carver in Allgill Gardens.
I'm about to say that's Allgill
Yeah,
Gardens.
I grew up in Allgill Gardens.
Wow,
Yeah.
you from the Gardens, and
from
people
Allgill
understand. You
Gardens.
look it up on Wikipedia. It
Block
said it's,
7, 13144 South Ingleside.
look at that. And you from the Gardens.
I'm from the Garden. Born on the west side, 13th and Kesey.
Mhm.
Moved there when I was 3 and lived in Allgill Gardens till I went away to school.
But you had a good education you went from the Gardens to Lindblom?
Yes, sir.
That's
Every
a
day.
long trek.
There's a bus to 95th Street, a train to 63rd, a bus from 63rd.
How can you go to Finger back in the day? I went to Finger back in the day.
Well, you know,
I know. I'm just saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know how I ended up in,
But that made the
8th grade
difference.
teacher
Okay.
told my mother, she said, he should take the test.
Because people, old schoolers know that Lindblom was the school back in
Right.
it was the school
Yes,
before
sir.
Whitney Young was built.
Yes, sir.
Lindblom was the school, so you got a good education. What college?
University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana.
Champaign. You got 2 degrees.
2 degrees.
Oh, we gonna see. That's why we're gonna have a good show or whatnot. Because see, people need to understand. I'm a limo driver by trade, and we talk about. I always tell people, Reverend Wright married my wife and I 21 years ago, and they say, "What do you think about that, Reverend Wright?" And I say, "You don't understand." And this is European Americans,
Right,
Latinos.
right.
They don't understand the history of this country.
Right.
Why a person like Reverend Wright is angry,
Oh, yeah.
and then when you tell your story.
yeah.
And you wonder why we still talk the way we do. It's a lot better than what it was 25, 30 years ago,
yeah.
but the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Exactly.
And
You're
we're going to talk
absolutely
about that in the next show. And we're going to talk about Rahm Emanuel and all these other kind of people. But the point is that the masses are divided and conquered, and many of our so-called African American leaders are part of that divide and conquer process.
Oh, yeah.
Do we understand that?
I think the people who, the so-called black group of elitists, they understand it. But the question I would ask them is, how do they sleep at night knowing that they understand it? There's a select group of people here in Chicago that are black. These 5 or 6 names surface when these kinds of things come up. These are the go-to people. These are the people that have the money changers, that have been allowed to break through certain barriers only to put them out there when they need them. And these people are involved in all of these campaigns that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, because people understand the dynamics that were in slavery are sort of still there. You got Massa, you got the white overseers, you got the black overseers.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Then
yeah.
you got the house Negroes and field
Oh, yeah.
Negroes. The
Oh, yeah.
dynamic is still there.
It's there. It's there.
But I don't think a lot of us really understand that, and it's kind of complicated because sometimes the black overseer does some good, but it's also holding us back. But we don't see that because he do so, like Jesse Jackson. Oh, Jackson, Reverend Senior Jackson does a lot of good, but he's also holding us back. So we can't really understand this and that.
I mean,
And that's what all due respect to him. you know.
Right.
I ain't saying nothing bad.
Well, no. I mean, that's good because I have no respect for him. I mean, so
But
that.
you know what I'm saying? People understand that.
Exactly.
Our leader, most of our leaders are they're overseers. That's what they are.
Well, with him, he's been a clog in the drain for black people accelerating since he's been here in '68. If you read the book Shakedown by Ron Timmerman, you would see that only 5 or 6 people have benefited from his so-called civil rights industrial complex movement. That him and Andrew Young and those guys who were with King, they basically took the civil rights movement and threw it in the Democratic Party. And King told them before he died, he said, don't join either party. He said, use both parties so that those that support your interests, you'll be able to, to maneuver. If the Republicans support your interests, go with them. He said, but don't join either party. This is what King said. And so with King saying that, you can see the Hispanics were smart enough during the Bush election to split their vote 50-50. That's why the Hispanics were able to move and do some things that we have not been able to do. Even up until the Obama election, black folks 95% for Obama. I mean, maybe 2 or 3% for Republicans and 2 or 3 for other, but the Hispanics still, I think, had a 60-40 split. But for us to take the civil rights industrial complex, I call it that because that's what it is, and for them to deliver us into the Democratic Party, and we've been there stuck ever since.
The live show is going to be really good, so y'all got to stick around. Well, go to the computer. You'll find the live show. What now? We're going to sit down and do this live show here in Chicago. Hey, we're on the internet 24/7. Mark Sims on the internet 24/7. And type in Harold Davis. You'll see him on the internet also. All right, this part is over, y'all.